All right, it's go time. Welcome to Recruiter on Call with Jobs. I am delighted to welcome Clint Lassiter here with me today. He's chiming in from Texas. Whereabouts in Texas are you, Clint?
I'm in Dallas, Texas, the
All right.
DFW area.
Okay. So I have probably waited in the DFW airport for a layover, but I have not had the pleasure of visiting Texas. So that is on my bucket list. I definitely want to do that. I hear you got some good barbecue.
I was just getting ready to say, hit me up and I'll show you some of the better barbecue places. It's probably as good as any in the nation.
All right, that's awesome. Well, delighted to have you here today, and
Thank
we've
you.
got some people chiming in here. Um, and I'm going to do a little introduction of myself, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to do an introduction of yourself. So, I'm Lynne Williams. I'm based in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Paoli, Pennsylvania, specifically. Um, I wear a couple different hats. I write resumes, LinkedIn profiles, and my focus is on keywords. So that's what I do for a living. But I also am a servant leader. I'm the executive director of a 501c3 nonprofit called Great Careers Network. So you'll find us on greatcareers.org. And what we do is we run about 18 to 25 events a month, mostly online, and this is one of them. So I do a monthly recruiter on call with jobs. Generally it is on the third Thursday of the month. I do have to change that up in October. It'll be on the third Wednesday of the month at a slightly different time, and the reason for that is I was invited to speak in person at an event in Wilmington, Delaware. So I haven't figured out how to clone myself, so I had to make some changes. But in honor of Veterans Day coming up, my next recruiter is definitely targets veterans and mil spouses. So can't wait to share that. Um, the other thing that I'm doing, or I probably should be doing, is working on writing my doctoral dissertation on the topic of LinkedIn for job seekers. So if you want to learn more about me and how to connect with me, just go to my LinkedIn profile. Right under my headline, you'll see more gobsmacking resources. And that is my link of links. That's my link tree. So that'll take you to everywhere you need to go for the nonprofit and for my upcoming speaking events, publications, and all that. So, welcome today. And Clint, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how long you've been a recruiter?
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me, first of all. So, yes, my name is Clint Lassiter with a company called Professional Alternatives. Our firm is a 26-year-old firm. We're actually based out of Houston. We're more of a boutique firm, and I'm actually working out of our DFW office, working remotely right now. I've got over 25 years in the recruiting industry. My area of specialization has been and will be accounting and finance, also a little bit of IT, and we're kind of developing a consulting and strategy practice as well. Professional Alternatives, a little bit about the firm. Again, we've been around for over 25 years. We've been recognized by Forbes magazine and a lot of different Texas journals, specifically the Dallas Business Journal, as being one of the greatest places to work, and a very fine firm, very high integrity. I can say that. That's the primary reason that I'm here. Formerly, I was with a company called Lucas Group for over 22 years. We ended up being purchased by Korn Ferry. A lot of the folks that had been there for a long time ended up leaving and are pollinated out throughout the U.S. as well. But back to Professional Alternatives, the type of stuff that we do, as I mentioned, my area of specialization is accounting and finance. We do a few other things. We do contingent recruiting, retained recruiting. We also do temp to hire. We deploy consultants. Some of the other areas of specialization that we work in, we have a legal services group, energy service and commodities, lending service. We have a support group, an administrative group, credit and risk. And then we have a general services group that we call professional search that does basically anything that we don't specialize in. So real
Wow.
solid firm. And if I can help anybody at all, I'm getting a little bit further along in my career. I'm trying to give back a little bit. Certainly enjoy being here with you, Lynn. Had the opportunity to get connected through you through another podcast I did, in that
Yeah.
I was partnering with someone that we're really trying to help senior leaders in transition. So good to be
So
here.
that was Christy Klein,
Correct.
and Christy and I actually met each other at PARWCC conference in Chicago back in April, but Christy and I have been working together in the Thought Leadership Branding Club, which is one of the co-promoters of this event. And she's been in the club for a while. I've been in the club for a little bit over 4.5 years. So I love the group. I learn a lot, and it's a great support as for me as an entrepreneur. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well as the nonprofit in the future. But let's talk about this really weird, wacky job market right now. Holy moly, things have been changing a lot. I know remote jobs are diminishing. There's not as many available as in the past, but what's happening in that out in there in that hiring landscape from your perspective? What trends do you see? What's going on?
Yeah, I'll put it this way, Lynn. If it's sort of like the Texas weather, if you don't like it, just hang around because it's going to change. Things are changing rapidly, and I'm sure you know that. I know you've been in the business a while. I'm dating myself a little bit, but I go all the way back to when we were using fax machines and before we even had computers. Fast forward now, AI is obviously changing the landscape. I know we're going to talk about that quite a bit today. That's one thing that we're seeing change things. Obviously, since COVID, that kind of flipped the market upside down. Everything virtually went remote at that point. But what I've seen since then, at least the last couple of years, I know there's still a large contingent of folks that want to work remote, but a lot of what I see with regard to talking to senior leaders, the push is to get back into the office most of the time. But I am seeing companies trying to stay competitive. You have to be to compete for good talent. And a lot of the jobs that we're working, not as many remote, although I've had made a couple of placements this quarter with remote companies, but we're still seeing a fairly good hybrid component. You know, bad news, yeah, it's a tight market. It really is. The good news is there are a lot of jobs out there. You just have to be diligent and try to be in a lot of places at the right time.
Yeah. So, even though you're in Texas, you place all over this country as well as other countries. So tell us a little bit about, typically where you've had to fill jobs.
Yeah. So my background prior to going with the boutique firm was with the national firm that had about 18 offices nationally, all in major cities. We've recently actually we just made a placement this week in Canada. Our group that I work with in administrative services just made several placements in Alaska. So I'm happy to try to help anyone that's anywhere. Certainly my network is wider and deeper in DFW and in Texas. But if anyone is seeking assistance, I'm not going to tell you that I can do something that I can't, but I can probably hook you up with a recruiter. And I will say, if you're a job search seeker and you're not connected with a good recruiter, definitely get connected with one or two. They will definitely help you widen your net. And I know a lot of recruiters, a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good ones out there. There's some that maybe aren't quite as good. Main thing is just have a high integrity recruiter that works in your niche. And I'm happy to try to link you up with a recruiter that works in your area of specialization.
That's awesome. So you mentioned get hooked up with one or two recruiters. If somebody is working on your behalf, um, you don't want to spread yourself too thin and put yourself in a back pocket of having too many recruiters that are, working with you, right? Like, what's the magic number?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a magic number. I would say more than one and less than five. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You
Yep.
you
All
need
right.
a couple to kind of widen your net. No one person has a monopoly on all the jobs. But you make a very good point, Lynn, and I'm not going to
Mhm.
go way off on what we tell clients because this is more about job seekers. But it's misunderstood, at least on the client side, that if I throw this out to six different recruiters, this is my better odds of filling the job. That's just
Mhm.
not the case. A
Right.
senior recruiter is going to look at that and go, wow, it's already very difficult. Even if I had an exclusive, now I've got
Mhm.
six different recruiters where we're kind of stepping all over the same talent. So if you're a pretty tenured, experienced person, you know that the odds of making that placement are very slim. It's kind of
Yeah.
the same philosophy, like you said. You don't want two or three or four or five recruiters, all over the place. What I actually try to do with some candidates, you can't do this with very many, but if you're a job seeker and you can find a recruiter that you trust that's in your niche, I actually get them to work with me on an exclusive basis for a couple of weeks. I also tell them, if you see something that you want me to try to run down for you, send it to me. I might know somebody. I might know somebody that knows somebody. If a recruiter can get you in, it's going to be a lot quicker than if you apply. I'm not here to say don't apply. People get jobs by applying. But if you can get a recruiter that will assist you, it's going to increase your odds.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, what you're saying because my daughter has worked for a recruiting firm for the past, I don't know, dozen years since she graduated college. She's no longer a recruiter or an account manager, but she's now with the Leadership Academy. And, you know, she worked on a very low salary, and it was commissions.
Right.
It's that she made the commission on the spread.
Yep.
So what that means is, the amount that you're paying the contractor and the amount that you're billing the company. And so, you got to respect recruiters because if they go to work for you and, they're spending their time and effort, you don't want to like be in too many recruiters back pockets because if somebody's working for you, you want to hope that, and thank them that they get that commission um to earn a living since they're taking the time to help you. My other daughter is has several portfolio career jobs, and one of them she works at as a server. And I don't know what they servers are paid in Texas, but in Pennsylvania, $2.83 an hour. So if you are not there tipping, these people can't even make a living wage because they rely on commissions. So I used to be in sales. I know how commissions, important commissions were too. So, all right, let's talk about resumes. What advice do you have for job seekers to craft an effective resume that stands out? What makes you excited when you look at a resume?
Great question, Lynn. And let me first say, I would probably be better served to be in that class rather than teach one. And I would recommend, first of all, get connected with someone like Lynne Williams to help you with your resume. Having said that, the resume is more important today than ever. You have to have the right keywords. You could literally be getting screened out, at least over the course of the last 6 to 12 months or more, by an AI, and not even make it to a clerk in the talent acquisition group. As a
Mhm,
recruiter, I hate to see that. That's not what hiring managers want to see either. So, number one, I would say, connect yourself with someone that can give you a good evaluation of a resume. I'm an okay critic. I know what I'm looking for, but I still go back to folks internally and say, hey, what do you think about the resume? I'm not as critical about it because I'm really digging in and talking to my candidates. We also submit an executive summary slash candidate profile on top of the resume as it relates to the job, which again gives the candidate a little bit more of a competitive edge. But here's a few things that I would recommend, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that as well.
sure.
From my perspective, we recommend 3 pages or less if you can. Now, everyone's different. I would say back when I first got in the business, we would even try to recommend it to be about 1 page. That changes as you get a lot of experience in the market. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
definitely keep in mind this is a highlight reel, not a novel. Put the highlights on there, try to keep it to 3 pages. Another one, and I do get pushback on this, so this is kind of a 50-50, but I recommend a chronology versus a functional. It just seems
Yes.
like hiring authorities want to know, of course, what you've done, but they want to know where you've done those things. That seems to be, something that gets a little bit more attraction. And I'll just say the third thing is speak to quantifiable accomplishments if you can. I call it the difference between exposure and accomplishments. Sometimes you have to really, you know, kick back and think, what did I accomplish? Trust me, professionals, you've accomplished a lot, but put the highlights in there. Things where I re-engineered a process and saved 25%. If your sales, I hit my quota, was 150% for 3 or 4 years in a row. Those are undeniable accomplishments that will definitely catch the hiring authority's attention.
Yeah, I tell clients who come to me, we might just have a little bit of a hate-love relationship. I have very high expectations. You may hate working with me, but in the end, you're gonna love me because I'm gonna make you look like a rock star. I'm gonna pull
Love
those
that.
metrics out of
Love
you.
that.
Absolutely. You gotta tell people how you help the company make money, save
Yes,
time, improve processes. How many people did you supervise? How many of this, that, and the other thing did you do? How many bed hospitals, did you work in or whatever. It doesn't always have to be individual contributions, but give me metrics so I understand the big picture.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We used
And
to call it
keywords, yes.
saved, made, and achieved, which is just what you made reference to. Those three things are really
Oh,
important.
yeah. Yeah, that's great. All right. Now, when you're looking at resumes, can you detect AI produced resumes versus human authentic resumes?
I don't think I've gotten quite that discerning of an eye yet. We actually have a resume tool that we take the resumes and it converts them into a really, really nice format. Now we can still go back in and tweak it, but I've heard horror stories about people getting, AI resumes that are not even from real people. And again,
Oh,
I'll say
wow.
that, oh, it's crazy. I won't go. In fact, this came up with a guy that contacted me after that last podcast with Christy, and he called me and told me I won't get into the whole thing, but they were literally at his company interviewing a bot that they all but hired. They were getting ready to issue the person a computer, and yeah, it's a crazy, crazy story. So
Wow.
it's kind of like a coin has two sides, so does everything else. So as much advantage as we have from AI, there are some things to be cautious about. But yeah, I would like to get your input on that as well.
So, every single resume writer I've talked to, recently, they're all saying, do not create an entire resume from AI.
Yeah,
Use it to help move you forward. I use it to get the metrics in the bullet points, but everything else is generated by a human, not a bot. And the AI resumes, they're pretty much black and white and
mhm,
boring. And that works, maybe for an applicant tracking system,
mhm.
if it's formatted properly with the, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of ATS systems that are available right now. Um, but I like a little pop of color in the human resume. I think it draws our attention and eye to the section. So I kind of assimilate this to a PowerPoint. You're going to tell them what you're going to tell them. You're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them. You can't do that third part on a resume and a LinkedIn profile. So just like LinkedIn has certain sections, that are standardized, the resume has those sections that are standardized. And if you have a little band, a little pop of color for each of those sections, okay, well, that's a section break, and this is what I'm going to learn under that section. And I think just like a newspaper, when you fold a newspaper in half, what sells? It's the headline, right?
Absolutely.
So many people have the words profile summary at the top of their resume, and it's like, face palm there, right? Um, Tell people what you want to be when you grow up. I mean, if you are a finance executive, if you are an accountant, a CPA, like you want to have that right up front at the top, right? So you know what you're
Yeah.
looking at and for what level of position. So, just like a LinkedIn headline, I like a headline at the top of the resume and a short and sweet profile summary paragraph. I have a very specific, way I do it, and it's 5 lines or less so that
Okay.
people will actually read it.
Hmm.
And then I get into core competencies, which is my alphabetical list of keywords. Now, some people say, "Oh, shouldn't I put keywords in the order of my importance?" And I'm going to say, "Clint, does your brain work the same way as me?" No, right? So if I present myself with keywords in a logical alphabetical order, you're going to say, "Oh, I see alphabetical, right? Must haves, nice to
Hmm.
haves. Oh, he, she, it also, not it. He, she also has." Um, and then I might do career highlights for some
Hmm.
people, which are, like keywords as well as the accomplishments that they did, and then get into that professional experience. And I absolutely agree with you for that chronological order and in reverse chronological order with the most current up top. So everybody's different,
Yep.
and but I do have like a standard format and kind of go with the flow with putting it together. So I'm a former K-12 teacher, and I
Okay.
used to write IEPs and GIEPs, individual education plans, and
Uh-huh.
gifted individual education plans. And to me, a resume and a LinkedIn profile is the GIEP for the adult. So I think it should all be, individualized, by the person.
I like what Chat GP does and all the AI stuff, but like you said, Lynn, sometimes if you just go with that, it's a little stuffy and it lacks authenticity and an individuality. So that's
Hmm.
really good feedback.
Yeah. So I use it to help move things forward, um, and help clients think about, well, where am I going to get this metric from that I hate you for?
Mhm.
But but the rest of it is definitely human generated.
Mhm.
So I take the base master resume once it's like all pretty and tell clients to copy and paste it into LinkedIn.
Okay.
But LinkedIn is above and beyond that. It's more, how you going to build your personal brand. So as a recruiter, are you looking at LinkedIn profiles for each and every candidate? And what do you see? What's your overall take on that?
Yeah, again, I I am on LinkedIn. If I could stay awake 24/7, I'd probably be on LinkedIn 24/7. As a recruiter and someone who used to, we had to go way back and going into the ruses to try to get names and this, that, and the other, which I never really liked about my industry. Now we basically have everyone's, or at least 80, 90% of everyone out there have all their resumes, right in front of us. So yeah, we look for the same thing. We're looking at credentials. We're looking at stability. May sound a little shallow, but a lot of times we're looking at the picture. We want to be sure that there's a professional picture there. Some people fight me on this. They like to have something where they're out having fun or hiking or things like that. And nothing wrong with that, but it's just been my personal preference that, I like to see a real buttoned up profile. Like you said, I like to see the
Hmm.
summary of what they want to do. I don't want to call them on something that's maybe they're qualified for, but if they don't want to do it. And I will back up and say that as a recruiter, and most of us are going to probably echo this, we're just looking for candor. We're not going to judge anything you've done or what you're wanting to do. We simply want to understand it. But yeah, I'm looking at LinkedIn profiles all the time, and I've been doing this a long time, but I try to look at myself as an experienced rookie. Things are changing. still trying to gather knowledge and learn a little bit more. A lot going on, and the landscape in LinkedIn is changing all the time.
I love that term, experienced rookie. That's awesome. I may have to borrow that for
You
something
certainly can.
somewhere along the line. All right. So, do you see people building personal brands on LinkedIn and then some people not? They just, kind of hang out there. And how do you think candidates can enhance their online process or presence for that personal brand?
Yeah, that's something that I'm still gathering information on, but it's so important. I mean, in my opinion, your LinkedIn profile is your personal brand. That's why I think it's so important. And if you have any questions about it, even if you feel like you're an expert, getting connected with someone like you and Christy, that's what you all do. I'm really big on connecting with subject matter experts because that's the way to get a little bit further, a little quicker, and even if you're good, maybe take that to great. But things
Hmm.
that we recommend candidates do, maybe uh, do a post, engage with the companies that you're interested in, follow them, comment on some of the things, just read up and have some knowledge on the companies that you're targeting. There is so much information out on LinkedIn. And if you can get connected with somebody like you that can help them navigate through it, it's only going to make everybody better.
Have you ever heard of Gale, Gale Insights?
I have not. I'm writing that
Okay,
down.
Gale Insights is a database in most libraries, and there are hundreds of thousands of companies that are listed in the Gale Insights. So when people are preparing for interviews, if they have the ability and the time, before their interview to prepare, it's a great way of getting the skinny on a company, if it's a big enough company, of course. But yeah, that's one of the databases. Um, so let's talk about interviewing. So, how can job seekers best prepare for interviews as a candidate that you're going to submit? And do you assist with interview preparation?
I'm so glad we got to this point because you may have to shut me down on this. I actually go back to my candidates now after all this time. Uh, Prepping candidates revolutionized my success in recruiting. Number one, I did not really realize how important the interview was and how important it is to prepare. But I really and truly, I can truthfully say the best interviewer almost always wins. For the most part, given two equal candidates with the same experience, I would say 90% of the time, the best
Wow.
interviewer wins. I just can't stress how important it is. And yes, we go through a detailed prep on each step of the process. The first thing that we're willing to do, and I'll keep this kind of general, is talk about general interviewing questions. There are 3 to 5 that are going to come up. And that gives the candidate a chance to sort of control parts of the interview. A lot of the interview the candidate is not in control of, but things like the tell me about yourself question. Come on. We know you're going to get that somewhere. Take a couple minutes and tell me about yourself. Or who is Clint Lassiter? It's the same question. And what we recommend, and see if you agree, 1 to 2 minutes back to that highlight reel of born here, raised here, and here's my education. We're not really talking about what you do for fun at that point. There may be a point in the interview where they come back and say, hey, what do you do for fun? But right now, we're trying to grab their attention, like we talked earlier, with their accomplishments, going through their background, keeping it 1 to 2 minutes. Like I tell candidates, it's not like an egg timer has to go off and it has to be real rigid. What we're hedging against are people who might give 1 to 3 or 4 word answers on one spectrum. The other spectrum are people that go off for 4 or 5 minutes. I can truly say that if you nail that first question, 50, 60% of the time, you're probably going to get asked back, and it's all downhill after that. But yes, we do an extensive prep. We're willing to do as much or as little, and I'm always asking questions. I'm always trying to be aware. What's the new interview question that you're getting? So yes, we do extensive interview prep.
That's awesome. Um, because I'm the mother of an AUDHD adult child, autistic and ADHD, and I have a few clients who are probably diagnosed with some neurodivergent diagnosis
Mhm.
or others. There's a little tip that I like to share. I don't know if you've heard of this one, but maybe you remember from middle school, high school, college, you were asked to do thesis statement writing.
Mhm.
Okay. So I tell people, maybe the easiest way to remember this, to tell me about yourself is go into the job description and look at three things that they're looking for. Okay. And then reiterate that in your tell me about yourself.
That's great.
So when you do the thesis statement, it's, I am A, B, and C. Then you go back and expound a little bit more details on A, a little bit more details on B, a little bit more details on C, and then you recap saying A, B, and C. So, I have an article that I wrote on greatcareers.org about thesis statement writing, and it's good, especially if you have to go in for a written test of some sort into an office for an interview. But you could also use that as part of your tell me about yourself because you are sort of recapping what the company is looking for, three particular points. I'm organized, I'm detail oriented, and I'm creative. And then expound on those, but those have to be in the resume. So just something that I'm throwing out there that makes it easy for people to remember. Just reflect on that job description that you're applying to.
Very good.
Um, all right. So, what are those common interview questions that you said there's 3 to 5, other than tell me about yourself? What else should people expect?
Yeah, good question. And this isn't blanket, but there's a few of them, like you said, that tell me about yourself. The other one that I wanted to touch on is reasons for change. And you notice I said reasons, not reason.
Mm,
But I'll tell you right now, I would say 90% of my clients, if not more, when I make a submittal, part of what we put on the executive summary or candidate commentary, we talk about their reasons for change. And that's something that you've got to be ready to handle.
mm,
Yeah, there's bad situations. The longer you're out there, the more likely you are to have been in a tough situation that's not going to be comfortable to discuss in an interview. It's okay. The main thing is just be prepared for it. Be prepared to say, hey, this is what happened. Lay it all out and then move on. But basically, the other thing I want to say about that is don't say anything negative about your prior employer. I
yes.
would certainly recommend starting out by saying, when I was at Acme Widget, I will say that was a great place to work. They gave me the opportunity to do this, this, and this. However, what happened was, and go into what prompted you to leave. We started going through a lot of layoffs, or, my boss was about the same age as me. Great boss. Loved the company though, and I wasn't going to be able to advance further. So, I sought opportunities elsewhere. But I would say the reason for change is probably the second one that you really have to be able to cover. I would generally say maybe the money question, although I gotta say, I think employers are getting a lot more astute. You might get that on so you want to be ready for that. But what I'm seeing right now is when you go through a recruiter, that's something that the recruiter generally handles. I will make
Hmm.
just a quick comment on that though, just in case you get the money question. I would try to make it two parts. One is, what are you earning? Got to be pretty specific with that. Currently at 120 and 20%. What tends to happen is the candidate wants to go into, now what I'm looking for is and things get a little bit weird. Make the hiring just stop with what you're making. Make them ask you, what are you looking for? Now we're kind of into the gray area. As I mentioned, I'm making 120 plus 20%. We all want to make as much as we can. I'm really just looking for a fair market offer. That's how I would respond there. And basically, there will be a number of components that I will look at besides money. So those are probably the biggest ones that I think, generically speaking. And another good thing about a recruiter, they'll know the specific questions that are coming up from their client. Those are things that we also go through in the prep.
Yeah, I'm a straight writer and keyword person. I don't do interview coaching. I don't do
Okay.
salary negotiation coaching. I don't do career assessments. But I've done presentations at all of them, right? But I don't coach people in those particular areas. But one thing, that I have heard is, when you get asked the salary question, defer, defer, defer as long as possible.
Yeah,
And that's with an employer.
sure.
Now, it might be different when you're working with a recruiter because the recruiter's working on your behalf.
Yeah.
So that's a different story. I think you would disclose that information with the recruiter. Am I right? Is that tactic right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I know people are more and more, they're hesitant to say what they're looking for. And I work with that. I respect
Mhm.
that. But I let them know, hey, I get it. Number one, we're all going to try to get as much as we can, and there's nothing wrong with that. Number two, my job, however, is to also keep us from getting blown out of the water where we're
Yeah.
not even being considered. So
Yeah.
I'm on your side on that. I mean,
Yeah.
getting right down to the brass tacks, I make more when you make more. So
Yeah.
just help me understand that. And some clients are still verifying, current compensation. So you got to be careful with that. If you can get by with, here's the range I'm looking for, that's great.
Yes.
But like
Yes.
you said, the best one is I'm looking for a fair market offer based on my experience. Of course, sometimes they're going to go a little further. What's fair to you? And this, that, and the other. We could talk
Yeah.
about that ad nauseum, but I think that's a good framework and a good benchmark.
So, I've also heard, when you defer, 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 well, what's your budget, for this
Yeah.
role? But again, that's dealing directly with an
Yeah.
employer versus a recruiter. So, just in case folks want some salary tips and compensation or and benefit tips, if you go to greatcareers.org, we have a little search bar box at the top right and you can put in salary and you'll find one article with 19 tips in it. And then if you put in benefits, you'll see all my alphabetical listicle of all the different benefits and whatnot that you can negotiate. But you first got to nail the salary the salary first before you can maybe negotiate some other benefits that you might get. So all right, let's talk about skills and qualifications. What are the most sought after skills and qualifications for candidates right now?
That's a great question, and it's going to vary from function to function. Um, Obviously, computer skills, if you're in accounting, IT, finance, system implementation, hey, we took a bad situation and made it a lot better. Sales, it's going to be like you said, I've been this much of quota for the last 4 or 5 years. I will say that I think as a sales professional who's looking for a job, you selling yourself is a lot easier than, say, the folks that I represent in accounting and finance. I'm a director of sales. I'm interviewing someone and they say, hey, Clint, I was basically 200% of quota for the last 10 years. I'm like, when can you talk to me again for a second interview? However, not all that black and white in accounting and finance. You've got to talk
Mhm,
about, again, made, saved, and achieved. Leadership, if you're in a leadership role, talk about the teams that you developed, how you've brought people that were maybe not in that upper 20%, but moved a few of them up. You also have to be able to kind of, be able to let them know you can make the tough call. Unfortunately, we had to make a
mhm.
tough call, and we upgraded our staff. And I know that you had mentioned on the questionnaire talking about soft skills. Boy, communication skills right now is just th- that's that's as important as the technical skills, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Gotta be able to talk to others. What about AI skills? Are your accounts that you're trying or employers that you're trying to fill jobs for, are they asking for people that have AI skills?
Absolutely. The more technical, the better. We certainly get into all the different platforms that they've worked on, all the different ERPs they've worked on, and then what they've done with them and the impact that they've made. The Power BI, the AI. I mean, a lot of I don't know that that's really been out all that long. I'll give you a funny story. I don't know if people remember about Sarbanes-Oxley when that whole thing came in. And boy,
Mhm.
that just revolutionized accounting and finance and all the recruiters. I didn't come from accounting and finance. I placed those
Mhm.
folks, but that wasn't my background. So we're trying to study up on SOX. What is that? And it was
Yep.
funny. The law had just been passed for about 3 months, and my clients are like, really like to have somebody with a couple of years of Sarbanes-Oxley, which was kind of funny. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
and
It's
and I'm
like yeah, it's like asking for, an entry-level job with 3 years of
there
experience,
you
right?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like now I'm kind of getting this with the Power BI and the AI. Would really like to see 4 or 5 years of experience with that. And I'm talking to some of my consultants, and they're saying, exactly what do they mean? Are they talking about using Chat GPT, or what are they really doing? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important. And that's one thing with my firm too. And I'm not the most technologically literate. I kind of built my desk off a stubby pencil and a dial-up phone, but you can't stay competitive unless you're staying on the front end of all that. Very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you mentioned communication skills as an important soft skill. If we go to greatcareers.org and in the top right you put in AI, there's several articles that I've written on AI, but one is I got like the blue cover and it has to do with AI and interviewing skills. There are, I think, close to 50 soft skills that I have listed there. And there's a lot of tips on how to answer behavioral interview questions using the STAR method for
Love
those
that.
soft skills. So
Love
I
that.
have a little tip that I'm going to share. This is not an index card, but pretend it was. If you cut a hole in the middle of this index card and you're doing a virtual interview and you tape this so that your camera comes out and you've written in black Sharpie little, points for your star stories and whatnot. It's a really cool thing where you're still looking at the camera, but you've got your little cheat sheet there. What do you think?
I love that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually had that as something I wanted to discuss on my
Yeah.
interview prep. When I can tell a candidate is very intently saying, "Clint, this is great," so I take it a step further and say, "Look, there's a couple of things. Let me give you two acronyms. One is STAR:
Yes.
Situation, Task, Action, Result.
Mhm.
Undeniable. There's no way that that doesn't work well when they're giving you the tell me about a time when
When.
dot dot dot.
Mhm.
Here's the situation, here's the task, here's what we did, and here's the result. Even if the result wasn't positive, you can talk about we failed miserably, but boy, did we get ready for the next project based on this. So
Mhm.
star, can't say enough about it. And I don't know where you picked that up. I remember that being a GE, Ford, and a PepsiCo way back when.
Yeah.
Pepsi used to be one of my biggest clients. And
Uh-huh.
man, they used that. They actually called it a targeted selection. After the
Mhm.
first interview, you knew the next interview was going to be a star based, sometimes panel interview. I'll give you one more if I may. This one I think is great, and I'm sure you've heard it for asking questions, which, by the way, that's another thing that's incredibly important on the
Oh,
interview.
yes. Mhm.
Asking thought provoking questions. The answers or the questions you ask can say much more about your business acumen than the statements you're making. And by the way, hiring authorities love to talk about their business. That's the quickest way to get it out of the interview box. Now we're having a business conversation. But my
Mhm.
acronym is SWOT: Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats.
Mhm.
SWOT. Where's the company strong? Where do you see some weakness in the department where I might be able to, you know,
Ah.
make a difference? What opportunities are you guys looking at with regard to further revenue streams? What's threatening your business? You talk about making a hiring authority put on their thinking cap and they love to do it. Those are great ways to score points. I'm glad you
And
brought that up.
and what keeps you up at night?
There you go.
Right, right.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a great that's a great way of thinking about questions you can ask on the fly. But of course, you can always take the job description, pop it into Chat
Yep.
GPT and say, "Hey, I'm a candidate for this job, and what questions should I be prepared, to ask at an interview?" So, if you are interviewing online, so you can get this little piece with the little hole in the middle. But if you're going to interview in person, I always tell people, hey, get one of those notebooks that folds out and you got the lined paper on the right and you have that little triangular pocket on the left, and maybe you have a couple little notes,
Yep.
to help you remember. And you always ask permission, hey, would you mind if I took some notes? It makes you look interactive, engaged,
Absolutely.
and interested. Lean forward, and really tune in. And so I like the SWOT idea. I mean, even if you put SWOT, on the top of your paper to help, remember, okay, well, what was I doing to prepare for this interview? Um, I have a question. There's one thing you said about you have to be prepared to talk about reasons why you left.
Hmm.
So I currently have a client who is in, accounting finance, and I don't know the reasons, but she did say that she was terminated.
Hmm.
How do you deal with somebody in that situation? Like, should that person, be upfront and talk about um, the why of that with a recruiter versus with a hiring or with a company? Like, how would you handle that?
Yeah, challenging, no doubt,
Mhm,
but certainly something that's happening more and more. And I kind of look at it like I'm a football fan. It's sort of like head coaches. There are ones that have been fired and those that are going to be. It depends on
mhm,
how long you're out there, and more than
mhm.
likely it's going to happen. But first of all, let me talk about the recruiter. I would say be brutally honest with them because
Okay.
I'm your advocate. We're going to
Mhm,
work on packaging that. And I'm not going to say we're going to lie about it. We're going to be very honest, but there's ways, to couch certain things. So tell me about what it is and let's work together on it. Second, the main thing is you have to say, hey, it was unfortunate, but here's what happened. And go ahead and explain it. Don't belabor it.
mhm,
If they
mhm.
want more information, let them come back to it. The tendency is we feel so guilty and kind of ashamed about that we do a lot of us and does and go on and on and on. What I can say is get a response, practice it, get there, and then move on. The other
Yeah.
way that you can kind of prepare for that is I know the standard, you're not going to be able to get a reference because companies are worried about liability, but you can contact someone that maybe worked with you that left, or a supervisor that was your advocate that left. And you can say, and
Mhm.
by the way, I do have a couple of references that were vouched for my work. Tough one
Awesome.
though, but yeah,
Yeah.
it can be overcome.
All right. So I'm going to do a quick little commercial break here, and then I'm going to ask you about what kind of openings that you have, and then I'm going to ask the audience if they would like to come up. And I know we have the amazing Meryl Cass moderating, the chat. Unfortunately, folks, I have bad eyes, and I'm looking at the chat on the screen here, and the print is just too tiny for me to read. So I will try and go through the comments and whatnot a little bit later this afternoon and respond or provide some helpful links or whatever. And maybe Clint can go through those comments
Certainly.
under the event also. Um, but I just can't read them right now. So commercial break here. This particular event is brought to you by two organizations. One is Thought Leadership Branding Club. And as I mentioned previously, I've been involved in it for about 4.5 years, actually more than that now. And I just love the camaraderie, in the club. It's just an absolute awesome community, mainly for entrepreneurs, but we do have people who are unemployed as well as employed in the club. But the people in the club who are offering events, and running events, they are experienced career coaches like Christy and Melanie Mitchell Wexler and Bobby Umar and many, many, many others. So those folks run clubhouse events, Zoom events, um, uh, or LinkedIn Lives. And, you can gather a lot of information if you happen to be a job seeker, who is on this call today. So go to the thoughtleadershipbranding.club events page. We're also on Instagram and LinkedIn company page. So the other one is obviously the nonprofit that I run, which is greatcareers.org. We also have an events page and 18 to 25 events a month. We have a new website that is under construction. I have no idea what it looks like because they're keeping it under the radar while they're building it. So it's getting a little bit too close to October, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and keep building the October events on our current website. And then, when they say they're ready, then, I'll have to switch them over. But we should have a new look, which I'm very excited about. But aside from the events, we run most everything online. We try to do what we can for free, but we are a nonprofit. And if you could buy us, one of these a month, a cup of coffee, that helps us keep running and helping us pay our bills and expenses while providing you massive amounts of value. Like if you think about $5 a month and 18 to 25 events, that's like 25 cents an event. So that is the best cup of coffee that you're going to get for yourself. And you're going to learn a lot from lots of subject matter expert speakers. So let's see. Let's talk about what kind of jobs you're currently trying to fill. I know, you don't have remote things in your pocket this week. You did last week, but not this week. It ebbs and flows. It changes. So, what are you trying to fill? Where are they located? And where should people go look for the jobs that are open with your company?
Certainly. Well, thanks again for asking. So, first of all, I would say go to our website, which is proalt.com, which is professionalalternatives.com. My email address is on there. I'll give it to you really quick. classeter@proalt.com. That's LASATER. And by the way, if you're not someone that works in my area of specialization, I'm really trying to help people out as much as I can. I've made a couple of changes. It's not easy. And if I can help you navigate that, if I can't help you, I'll connect you to somebody who can. So please keep that in mind. The things that we're feeling, my group right now is all accounting and finance and strategy. Most of them are in Texas. I actually have a client in Arkansas that I'm working on. There's only two big companies out there. It wouldn't be hard to figure out who they are. So that's a big client of ours. So that's a little bit about what we're doing in accounting, finance, credit, and strategy. Our legal group works all different kinds of attorneys, paralegals, administrators in the legal industry. Most of that has been in the South, Texas, Houston, San Antonio. We also have an energy trading and commodity group, which is very specialized. It's based out of Houston. That's a very niche kind of field. And I'm in touch with that particular person all the time. If you have that kind of background, I will say our group is a specialist in that area, and they're working a little bit more on the national basis. And then we do have tons of administrative jobs, both full-time, perm, direct hire, as well as temp and contract to hire. So that's a little bit about kind of what we're working on. One tip I was going to give too, I forgot to mention this earlier, for those that are targeting remote roles. So the remote roles that I've been filling, the fully remote, have been with PE portfolio companies. And here's the reason I think that is. A lot of times, as we know, PEs, they're not going to keep those companies forever. I'm not saying they're going to come in and buy them and chop them up in 12 months, but a lot of times it's a 2 to 4, 3 to 5 year kind of grow and then sell. So the reason I'm saying target those is they're not that interested in having like an office in San Antonio or Columbus, Ohio. These last two roles that I filled, one was a Canadian company. The 4 or 5 hiring authorities are spread out all over Texas. They don't know if they will ever have an office, and they were talking a little bit about their portfolio sponsor. The same thing with the other company. So if you can look at those major PE firms and look at their portfolio companies, that might be something else to kind of put in your arsenal.
All right, awesome. So, are you open to having job seekers reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
And if they're a good fit for any of the roles you have, how's the best way for them to reach out and make that introduction?
Yeah, you can go to my LinkedIn profile and just reply there or apply there, or send me an email or go to our website. But like I said, whether you're in accounting and finance or not, if you're looking for a niche recruiter, I might not be able to help everyone, but I'll certainly do my best to do some digging and try to find an expert in your area. One thing about recruiters, there are some generalists out there. Nothing wrong with that. We've got a couple with my firm, but when I got into recruiting, the firm that I joined had just gotten away from everybody working everything and started specializing. That was a very long time ago, over 30 years ago. But I would say, whatever your niche is, look for a niche recruiter if you can. Their network is probably going to be wide
Yeah.
and deep in the area that you work, and happy to try to help in any way I can.
And if you do have a candidate that you submit for a position, what's the typical follow-up time by
Sure.
a job seeker? Like, what should they do? Should they wait for you? Should they, just follow
Yeah.
up on their own or what?
Great question. Let me first say that we're the middleman, and we get just as frustrated with our clients as you all do when we don't get good feedback. Me
Mhm.
personally, I'm not perfect, but I really do my best to make sure candidates are kept in the loop. Even, hey, we didn't hear anything this week. I'm still getting traction. I still believe the job's open, but again, I'm the middleman, and I'm, sorry I can't get back with you. To answer your question though, if a recruiter's got traction on a search, the company's, hiring and interested in filling, which by the way, we ask a lot of questions about that. We don't want to get candidates fired up about something that we can't deliver on. To answer the question, you should get feedback in a week or less. The feedback would come through me. At that point, I would call you and say, hey, Lynn, good news. We got an interview request. What's your availability? It's going to be this type of interview. Of course, the candidate's going to ask, hey, what happens, this, that, and the other. What I do after that is we confirm the time. Then they'll get a confirmation email from me with all the details. On the bottom of that email, I'll say, and by the way, I need your availability for a prep call. If you'll provide that to me, I'll send you a calendar invite right after that. On the other side, it's not always great news. If they pass on the candidate, I do call them and try to give them a little bit of feedback on why. And then I also ask them, what else do you have going? I still want to be a resource for you if you want me to, with regard to further opportunities. So that's a quick overview on how that works.
All right. Well, great. So, I don't know if anybody wants to come up and ask questions. If not, then I'll, continue on with you for a couple more minutes, and then we'll give it a wrap. But if anybody does want to come up, you got to click the restream link, and I have to let you in. And doesn't look like anybody's wanting to come in right now. Not nobody's knocking on my restream door, but. Is there anything that I've not asked that you would like to share?
I guess just in kind of wrapping up, Lynn, this is awesome. I really like what you're doing. Um, I would say I kind of try to break it down big picture in the 3 stages of job search. The pursuit of the interview. Nothing happens till you interview. Now, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing prior, but do everything you can as a job seeker to get that interview. Um, you know, knock on doors, call the hiring authority. Now, if it's through a recruiter, that's a little different, but I'm talking about on your own. And also just reminding people, I think the statistic about recruiters, we're placing maybe 20-25% of the jobs, about 10-15% are filled online. Guess where your job's going to come from most of the time? Your own personal network. Get out there and wake up that network. Um,
Amen.
yeah. Second thing, prepare for the interview, like we've talked about. And the third thing is just keep following up. I mean, we are hearing some horror stories of people who are in transition that are sometimes taking 3 to 6 months to find things. But I will say, jobs are out there. Companies are hiring. They're just a little hesitant. They don't want to make a mistake, but just stay diligent.
All right. So I do see we have Sagat Kumar coming in. So let me let him in to ask some questions. And let's see. Whoops. Why does this do this? I am not super proficient at at Restream, but all right, Sagat Kumar, welcome. What
Wonderful
questions do you
topic,
have?
Lynn, and thank you, Clint, for sharing those wonderful insights. I just had a experience. I saw feedback message, and then I just posted it on LinkedIn. So I want to pick your brains, Clint, on that. Right? It was a very generic. There was no mention about, it was just saying that sorry, we are rejecting your application. They didn't mention the company name, they didn't mention the email, they didn't have the, it was from Dayforce link, it said notify at Dayforce. There was no branding. So regarding feedback, right, being in the recruitment space, right, how important is it giving feedback to candidates? How important do you think is, as a recruiter and in the TA space, and also people who are job seeking, how important is it for them to accept the feedback, right?
Great question. So from my perspective, I think the feedback's incredibly important. Number one, I try to get the feedback from the client, especially if the candidate's passed on. Hey, what could John have done better? And a lot of times it may be, we just found somebody better or that was a better suited, better cultural fit. But I dig a little deeper and just say, look, I'm a big advocate of this person. What can we do to help? I'm very upfront with the feedback. I couch it very positively, however. So yes, I think it's very important. Am I answering your question? And if you've got further question, let me know.
Yeah, definitely, Clint. I understand the importance of giving feedback, and Lynn, we have always talked about, right. If the, as a job seeker, also to ask for feedback, right, regardless of if
Mhm.
you've been rejected, give it a couple of tries. If you don't get it, move on, but definitely ask feedback and take those. Thank you both for sharing your insights.
All
Got
right. Well, thank you for jumping up.
one little thing I was going to add to Lynn on the
Mhm.
closing statement of the interview. That's another
Yeah.
thing that I'm huge on. I know we're running out of time, but I tell every candidate, have a closing statement prepared. There's two
Mhm.
parts of the interview that the candidate can control. One is the tell me about yourself. You be ready for it. The rest of the interview is an exchange of info. But when that interview wraps up, have a closing statement. I'll give you my little template. How do
All
you see
right.
me and my background fitting into what you're looking for? And the only reason I'm asking is because I'm very interested in the job. I would say that unless you hated it, you might as well get pursued. And I can tell you at least 75% of my clients in the consensus meeting are going to ask, did he ask for the job? Yes, he did.
Mm.
Check, check, check. You just want that check, that box checked.
Yes.
Sometimes you can say, they'll say, Clint, we like everything about it, but maybe you don't have a lot of ABC. That was the only thing. We kind of call that the resurrection close. I'm glad you brought that up, and then do the best you can to overcome it. That's something that I'm getting very excited about learning, and I've actually done this, and this to kind of overcome it. You don't get that a lot, but if you do, gives you a chance to at least address it before you leave.
Yes. That you got to find out what's making them hesitate,
Yep,
and then try
they'll tell you.
and
Yep.
overcome that. And by the way, Christy Klein is here. She said, "Hi, Lynn. Hi, Clint."
Hey,
So,
Chris.
Christy spoke for the Great Careers Group, I don't know, in the past year, and I'd love to have her back. She and I are absolutely positively aligned in what we think about resumes, I think. So yeah, she's a great person to reach out to if you need to get some resumes and LinkedIn profile stuff done. I don't call these people competitors. I call them colleagues, and I
Love it.
respect them. I
Love
learn from them, and we help each other out. You know what? There's only so many hours in a day, right? And she's got a cute little doggy that she has to take care of, and I have 3 little grandsons that I watch here and there. So to wrap up, what I'm going to do is say proalt.com if you want to reach out and check out what Clint's jobs are, thoughtleadershipbranding.club, and go to the events page and see what's going on there. And then greatcareers.org, the events page, and see what's going on there. And believe it or not, in about less than a half an hour from now, I do have a speaker on AI tools to help you land an interview in 2025. It is Andrei Maltsev, who is from Toronto, and he and I did collaborate and write 3 articles together on AI, and he also spoke for us September 2nd when I happened to be at Disney World. And technology was not exactly precisely working on my side. So anyway, he's coming back to share again. And I know some people who were there on September 2nd have re-registered because I think they've had time to play with the Fladeus.ai platform. And maybe now they have questions. So it is a free event. So go to greatcareers.org and sign up. It's, in 25 minutes from now. So also, feel free to reach out and connect with me. You have to hit the more button to hit connect rather than I don't have a blue connect button, just a follow. So reach out and say that you were on this call and check out my more gobsmacking resources right under my headline. Anything you want to share to wrap up?
No, I just wanted to say thanks for having me.
All right.
I really love what's going on. If, like I said, I'm a little bit more of an expert in preparing people and helping them, specifically in my field, but the resume, the LinkedIn profile, the career coaching, it's very important. Get connected with a good career coach and a LinkedIn expert.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We do restream this out on the Great Careers Facebook page. It's on our YouTube under Lives, which is at Great Careers PHL after YouTube. And it's also on my LinkedIn events. I don't know how long LinkedIn keeps that on, maybe 6 months or something like that. I don't think they can keep it on forever. But I want to thank Merrill Cass for moderating the chat. He's always here. Let me tell you about next month's speaker and change of date and time, and then we'll wrap up. So I have Robin Grable, and she is with Talent Ascend, and she does do a lot of posting and positioning for veterans and mill spouses. I definitely like to support veterans. I'm part of the DVVC.org, which is Delaware Valley Veterans Consortium, and I help plan, some social media and whatnot for marketing for all our local VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations. So thank you again, Clint, for coming. I appreciate this. And so the next one is going to be October 15th, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's not the Thursday, my normal third Thursday, but it's the third Wednesday, October 15th. Just think a tax day, right? If you are late in filing, and 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. So it's an hour later because I think I have another event that's at lunchtime. So thanks again. I'm going to end the call now, and I hope everybody has a great day and wishing you much success in your job search. It's a tough market out there, but make networking a habit and make sure you got all your career documents in order. So, you got to win, you need a nice career document to land you the interview, and then you got to practice for that interview. All